Hi, everyone. Today, I'm here to talk with you all about something that I believe impacts each and every one of our lives. Happiness, satisfaction, the ability to feel content in a world that has constantly evolving biases, prejudices, and expectations. I'm here to talk with you all today about technology, more specifically social media, and how it communicates these subtle biases, prejudices, and expectations, and thus undoubtedly affects our day-to-day experiences. And ultimately, I hope that I can tell you all how this social media phenomenon affects our sense of self-confidence. And perhaps I can provide some ideas and strategies as to how we can enhance our sense of well-being while simultaneously pursuing a more unified sense of self. Fancy jargon aside, long story short, I'm here to help you all feel happier. But before I do so, I'd like to get the wheels turning a little bit. Ask the audience a few questions. So if you could just raise your hand high in the air if the answer is yes, or keep your hand down if the answer is no, I would greatly appreciate it. So I'll start off with an easy one, the first question. How many people in the audience have one or more of the following? A Facebook, a Twitter, a Snapchat, or an Instagram? Hands up, folks. Okay. That's what I thought, just about everybody. We can, I guess, thank Mark Zuckerberg for that. So let's move on to the second question. And here's where I really need your honesty, everyone, because it's a little bit different. How many people in the audience have done one or more of the following? Sat, refreshing a page, waiting to see if you got a new like or favorite on that post you just put up? Maybe you've accidentally sent a Snapchat to an old boss of a crazy party instead of to your friend or family member. Or maybe you've stalked that pretty guy or girl's Facebook so hard that you could tell them the order of their profile pictures better than they could. Or all the above? That's the boat I'm in. Hands up, folks. Come on, be honest. Look to your right, look to your left. You're in good company. It's okay. So let's go on to the third question. Once again, hands in the air if you happen to know the answer. Is there anyone in the audience that can tell me the number of undergraduate students on an annual basis that commit suicide because they feel as though they're not good enough? Not as many hands on this one. 1,100. On average, 1,100 undergraduate students commit suicide on an annual basis because they feel as though they're not good enough. That's 1,100 brothers, 1,100 sisters, 1,100 sons, 1,100 daughters, 1,100 teammates, 1,100 classmates. That's 1,100 best friends. And today, I'm not here to suggest that there's some type of causal relationship between social media and suicide, because that just wouldn't be true. But what I am here to talk about is how social media provides for us this filtered perspective on the world. And in doing so, it sets this impossibly high expectation as to who we should be, what we should look like, so on and so forth. And so today, I hope to close that gap between what we see online and what's actually possible in reality. Because I think that if each and every one of us starts to understand that we all have both strengths and weaknesses, we can save one, if not many, of those lives in the years to come. So let's get started. I'd like to start with somebody very near and dear to my heart. This is my great-grandfather, Gary Garabedian. And Gary lived a pretty traditional immigrant story. He came over from Armenia in the early 1900s as he was fleeing the Armenian genocide, and he worked a myriad of odd jobs until he had developed the business acumen to start his own company. Known as Thorndike Mills, the business is still in operation to this day. And there was a lot of special things about Gary. He found pride in working really hard. He wanted to provide for his family. He loved being a part of his Armenian American community. But there was a very atypical thing that brought Gary a sense of happiness: apple pie and some coffee. So you might ask why. Why did apple pie and some coffee bring Gary such happiness? Well, it was because every single day he would go across the street on his lunch break, he would walk up to the local deli man and he would smile. And in his broken Armenian English accent, he would say, "Apple pie and some coffee, please." And he would smile at the man. And over the course of time, he started to develop a relationship with this man where he knew every day that Gary was coming for the apple pie and some coffee. Gary didn't speak much English, so those were 6 of the only words that he knew. Apple pie and some coffee, please. And what was so meaningful about this relationship to Gary was that he was connecting with someone based over a common experience. The usage of English, being an American, it provided him satisfaction connecting with someone on a deeper level that was outside of his Armenian community. But what would come next, I don't think Gary would have ever expected. I'd like to take you all to a galaxy far, far away, only known as California, 1973, where we see 2 Stanford researchers working on this new technology known as the internet. It was initially meant for government officials to be able to communicate more easily than ever before. But over the course of time, we saw this technology evolve and we started using it for consumer applications. We got things like email, instant messengers, and Skype. All of these technologies that allowed us to communicate with the people and the things that we cared about more easily than ever before. Now, before I proceed with the talk, I'd like to step back and provide you with a few lessons that have come from my life, 2 specific lessons. So the first one comes from 6th grade version of David Selverian. And that lesson is that usernames last, so pick them wisely. You see, in 6th grade, I thought it would be a great idea to make an AIM screen name based on the pretty girl in my class's favorite candy. And so by doing that, I got the half, oh, it's cute, you're in 6th grade card. I also got the half, okay, you're a creep, I'm not really interested. But what you don't realize is that 3 years from that point, when you're in 9th grade and you're still sending messages from Pixie Sticks 89, you're sort of seen as a weirdo. Now, the second lesson I have for you all is kind of similar. Choose your email address very carefully. As my good friend Paul on campus is now learning, when you reach out to recruiters and you use the email address sexyhottiepaul69420, you don't get the responses you would anticipate. You know, it's an attention grabber, but not in the right way. So be careful with the usernames and the emails that you choose. Moving on. So now we're in this world of social media. You know, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, Yelp, Reddit, all of these technologies that allow us to connect with the people and the things that we care about. So you would think, now we're happy, right? Wrong. Study after study after study after study is telling us that social media negatively impacts our mental health. It's leading us to live angrier, lonelier, less satisfied lives. But the question behind all of these studies, that core question is, why? Why does this like symbol make us feel so happy or so unhappy on a day-to-day basis? Well, I'm here to suggest that it's because slowly but surely we are developing this second life, so to speak. We are developing this digital identity that is a collection of our online profiles. But the problem with doing that is that affirmation in the digital world is very binary in nature. More simply put, you either get the like on the photo or you don't get the like on the photo. Whereas in reality, there's this whole gray area where you don't know if someone liked something or didn't like something, and that allows us to salvage a sense of interpersonal confidence. I would also suggest that social media allows for us to do interpersonal comparisons that can be very harmful to our mental health. You know, it's really hard to feel satisfied with your life when you're constantly scrolling through a feed of curated content that showcases extraordinary events. And finally, I would suggest that social media has us focusing on the superficial. You know, you don't really get to know somebody based on the filtered photos that they throw online or the selective posts that they make once or twice a day. You don't get to find out who they really are as a person. And the amazing thing about all of this is you wouldn't think that philosophers have much to say. It's new technology, right? But that's actually not the case. For generations, philosophers have been talking about similar ideas. But it's only now that we can use those ideas and those lessons to better understand how and why social media is influencing us. I'd like to start with the humanistic perspective. It's broken down into 2 fields, existentialism and phenomenology. And what the existentialists, specifically Martin Buber, would suggest is that we have 2 types of relationships in our lives. I and thou relationships and I and it relationships. Now, the I and the thou relationship is what we saw Gary forming with the man at the deli. It's when you understand that the human being you're interacting with is constantly evolving. They're a dynamic thing. They have different ideas and expectations that are constantly changing, but nonetheless, you connect with them on a personal level. You understand them for both their strengths and their weaknesses. On the other hand, we have the I and the it relationship. And what the I and the it relationship entails is taking something dynamic, like a human being, an idea, or a concept, and trying to characterize it by some type of static image or selective piece of information. It's when you go on your friend's Facebook page and try to understand who they are as a person based on the photos and the comments that they post. And what the existentialists would suggest is that we can only find true meaning when we create I and thou relationships, because it allows us to develop a rapport with someone that is so much more meaningful than, apple pie and some coffee. Now, the phenomenologist would suggest that we are thrown into this box in life. Martin Heidegger says that when we come into this world, we are surrounded by rigid expectations, rigid beliefs, rigid attitudes, and the ultimate process is leaving that box of inauthenticity to a stage of authenticity. And just like any humble psychologist or psychiatrist or philosopher would do, he named this process, moving from inauthenticity to authenticity, the Heideggerian journey. So not a super creative name, obviously, but it gave us a lot of insight into the cognitive outcomes and the factors that are affecting us because of social media. Now, at this point, you're probably like, David, you've thrown a lot of philosophical and psychological ideas at me. I'm a little bit confused. So I commissioned a good friend of mine, Mr. Peter Griffin, to help us explain what's really going on throughout these theories. So you see, Peter, he has a wife named Lois, and he has a neighbor named Joe. And Peter and Lois decided that it'd be a good idea to make Facebook profiles. So they did. But as Peter's going online, he notices that Lois recently liked Joe's new Facebook profile picture. He was looking pretty jacked. So Peter got a little jealous. He decided that his fat body, all the beer drinking, might not be so attractive to his wife. So he decided to post something new online. He transformed himself using some type of filter or technology to look a little more chiseled and cut. And so now, he can compete with Joe online. He can get just as many likes. But the problem with this is that the cycle continues. We all see the personas that each and every one of us put out online, and we're constantly in a competition to live up to those expectations. Whether being that aesthetically good-looking or whether it's living that experience of going to a Cancun spring break trip, we're all trying to show to the world what we want them to see. And this can be very harmful. And it brings me to something I like to call the filtering phenomenon. Does this photo maybe look familiar to you? Some type of edited photo of some pretty girl that you'd see on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or Twitter, whatever it may be. When I see a photo like this, I ask myself, what's behind that smile? Does she have bulimia? Is she depressed? Are her parents going through a divorce? Did she recently fail a class? There are so many stories that could be behind that smile. And it's important when you see things like this that you recognize it's not always rainbows and sunshine. We're not always smiling and feeling happy. Everybody has both strengths and weaknesses. It's important to recognize that we're each human beings, dynamic. We need to start creating I and thou relationships instead of I and it relationships. And so I started this talk saying that I was going to provide us all with some real ways to feel happier, right? And everyone's wondering, okay, I now understand that filtering happens, people are a little bit fake online, but how do I feel happier? Well, I would suggest that moving forward, we have a choice. We can continue to invest in the digital world, which ultimately will lead us to live dissatisfied lives, or we can start focusing on reality. And in that reality, we can focus on cultivating intimacy in our lives, the I and the thou relationship, focusing on who people truly are instead of what they selectively show the world. Does this maybe look familiar to you? Taking a photo of your food, getting ready to post it online later instead of engaging in conversation with someone who's right across the table from you? Today, I challenge each and every audience member to put down their phones, to forget about that photo that they're going to post online later, and to engage in a real, meaningful talk with someone, whether it's the person sitting next to you or someone back at your dorm room or someone at home. Because maybe by doing this, we can all start to realize that the only thing we really need to feel happy can be as simple as apple pie and some coffee. Thank you.